Welcome to Evidence-Based Audio Engineering number 139, and this is not if, but when. And so let's see, first thing I got here. I heard from Vern Grainer that there's a new XAir 18 driver, and this probably means that since most of these are kind of a unified family, this probably means there's new drivers across the board for Behringer stuff. And one of the problems was, though, like, so let's say the XAir 18, it's an 18 input audio interface, which shows up as an 18 input audio interface under ASIO, but under the standard Windows drivers, there was only like one pair or two pairs or something. And I think Vern said that now they have 4 pairs. I'm looking, so the guys who are watching on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube, you guys can see we're looking on the driver page of Behringer, but I'll just go ahead and read you the release notes. So it says TUSB audio, the Vesicon, the Sycon, remember we talk about them all the time. So if you guys didn't believe me that they build the Behringer drivers, here they are, straight from Behringer. So Vesicon USB Audio 2.0 class driver for Windows revision history. And so this is May 18th, 2021. But it has a different, I don't know. Never mind. I'm just going to read it. New MIDI pipe statistics in the SPI utility. New several registry parameters for MIDI added. I wonder if that one had to do with remember you weren't able to put too many MIDI devices on Windows back in the day. I think you can now, though. Fix switch preferred ASIO buffer size with driver package containing MIDI only and audio devices. I'm not too sure what that is. Change MIDI RX now uses USB flow control. Change improved ISO packet error check. Change scripts use Python 3.9.1 now. Change DCK needs Windows 10 now. Change documentation. Change one channel can be part of more than 4 sound devices now. I have no idea what that means. I'm not seeing anything about more WDM or direct sound drivers showing, but I'll check on this. I meant to install this, and so I could actually give you guys pictures if this actually works. Maybe I'll do that next week. I'll put that in the notes. But let me move on here. But just yeah, if you got an XAir 18 or whatever, let me know. I may or may not redo the drivers before our next show. I'll see. Okay. So for you guys who also watch or listen to the Instant Action, or actually I think it used to be called Instant Action. Now it's called like Join Combat or something, podcast. You guys who are watching online, you can see I Araxiumed my engineer. That took years, but it's done. So yay. Okay. I know we talk about, problems in forums, problems of when people are just, somebody asks a technical question, they should get a technical answer. Instead, you always get preaching, you always get religious nonsense. Even in the audio forums, you don't get what you asked. or the worst, how many shows have we done on let me Google that for you, right? We all know about Google already. Anyway. And we've talked about how Google is no longer a very good search engine for most of the specific types of stuff you have. But anyway, I was asking on the Line 6 Helix group, and I said, any must-have metal preset packs. I really love Chop Tones Metallica for bias, but now I'm looking for some basic heavy amp and cab tones for metal mixes. And somebody says, and this is I should hide this guy's face because this is typical. I mean, this is not like this guy's all by himself here. This is a lot of times. And he's probably not actually that bad on this one. He probably means well anyways. He says, honestly, presets are a waste of time and effort. If you have knowledge of gear and know what kind of gear the sound you want uses, you're golden. Presets don't take into account headphones versus speakers, guitars, pickups, etc., etc., etc. I just don't see the point. If you're looking for a generic modern metal, start with blah, blah, blah. Okay, so he knows, how to get the thing. But a preset, with IRs or with the whole chain here, you can't. It's not the same thing as like saying a reverb preset where you're trying to. Actually, that's not even right. See, sometimes presets are like an EQ. You're trying to tailor it to this person's voice, but sometimes preset just means matching something that's out there. And this in the case of an amplifier, I could give you the exact same amplifier, cabinets, room, microphones, whatever, guitar player even, and have you record that, and then I do the exact same thing, and I bet you we get totally different sounds. So it's not enough. It's not like I'm asking for, hey, give me the settings on an amplifier or whatever. What it really is all the EQs and tones and everything to really get a certain sound, a starting point. Like if you were to say, oh, I want this to sound exactly like a Marshall 800, every single modeler out there, you're going to have to start at a certain spot in order to make it sound that way. And it may not match the knobs exactly. And so there's no reason to do this kind of snark, this kind of preset, or like a really complicated compressor. If you're using a really complicated compressor and you want to know, hey, is this thing reading MS or is this thing reading left, right? You could store that with the preset. There's nothing wrong with that preset. That's not a waste of time preset. And then the other thing is, if you have knowledge of gear and know what kind of gear the sound you want uses, you're golden. I have tons of knowledge of gear, man. I know, people on the internet don't know who you are, but just having that knowledge of gear, and you can't know every gear. I don't know a single engineer who's the absolute best at every single instrument. I know quite a few who are very, very, very good on just about every instrument, but you can always get better, and there's nothing wrong with wanting those preset things. So the anti-preset know-it-alls is kind of the let me Google that for you guys, So, but hopefully this will turn out okay. All right. So there's something over at the at Safe Space. I just wanted to read some of it and maybe comment a little bit. Let's see. So where are we? So the titles of this thread is Dumb Things You've Done in the Studio. So the guy who starts it says, I think there's a similar thread somewhere, but I don't know where it is. I wanted to add my recent dumb thing. I had a session yesterday. Luckily, it was my own. Just a rehearsal I have every week. I always record. We got the headphones dialed and had done a couple of takes on one song. I had just been trying to get the patch bay going with my Millennia Pre, but I wasn't using them. Right before the next take, I decided to turn off the pre's. Well, it's towards the back of the bottom of the rack. Below the Millennia is the Firmware power conditioner. Instead of turning off the Millennia, I turned off the power conditioner, which shut off the entire system. Nothing saved. Thankfully, it was just my rehearsal. Holy smokes, I had to reset the cue mixes, but there were tweaks. We all had to just laugh as the guys took 10. That's why I say not if, but when. You're going to mess up big time if you do the studio stuff. Okay, so let me just say, obviously, this guy's not using Reaper. Had he been using Reaper, when that power went off, it would have saved everything up to that point. So next time, use Reaper. Yeah, much safer for you. But, this is one of those threads that's talking about, people telling things that they did. And one guy says, not sure, but somehow it didn't record. I mean, that is every time you forget to press record, every time you forget to have actually loaded the tape, any stupid thing you did, that was one of the things you say, I'm not sure what happened. It just didn't record. Somebody else says, record over a track I wanted to keep on tape. Ever since then, I call the record button the history eraser button. And see, that's another thing about DAWs, right? You don't really have to throw anything away, thankfully. I like the way this guy's thinking. The dumbest thing I ever did in the studio was my gear choice. I adhered far too long on the oldish analog gear, which was ridiculously expensive, needed regular service, and offered only limited features. Yep. Quit drinking the Kool-Aid, guys, but we talk about that all the time, so we're not going to harp on that. Let's see. One guy says, I wiped up crumbs from a table without realizing that someone had spread out his drugs. The producer was not amused. The person suspected of being the consumer, on the other hand, was very much amused. So to this day, I'm not quite sure who had bought the stuff. Here you go. Needlessly apply minor updates that completely broke a keyboard that was working just fine. Now, here's the thing, though. Like, you keep hearing about amplifiers. I mean, you've heard about iPhones and stuff, but you hear about amplifiers and modeling devices and stuff bricked from firmware updates. That just shouldn't happen, man. I mean, that just should not be something that could happen. That's terrifying. Mine was using a DAT without confidence heads on a live concert. Luckily not a paid job. Heads clogged right at the beginning and I got zilch. Wow, so he thought he was recording a show and he wasn't. Okay. So here we go. I've never said this out loud, but it still haunts me more than 20 years later. As a low-level guy at a studio, we were cutting tracks for a regional blues band. Main engineer cut the core tracks, and I was tasked with running the 2-inch during some overdubs. Somehow, I still don't know how, about a half dozen channels of the original drum tracks became record-enabled, and I didn't notice. Started cutting a guitar overdub and erased about 2 minutes of the master with silence. Everyone must have been pissed, but nobody yelled at me, not sure why. They went back and actually punched that section in, and I think it was pretty seamless. I didn't work on that project again. It still gives me a stomachache just typing this. Yeah, I mean, that's terrifying. And I've done that on analog tape before. I've done worse. See, here's somebody else. I'm the new Totally Green assistant on a Woody Allen scoring session. Midwestern kid, still pretty new to Manhattan. I'm taking the lunch order. All deli sandwiches and plates. One of the big shot producers says pastrami on rye, extra lean, mustard, potato, salad on the sandwich. Rather than repeating it back verbatim, I said, "You mean potato salad on the side?" The room went very quiet. Let's see. Spent money on gear I don't need. Let's see. Okay, so this has happened. See, this is when you work super late and the band's there and they're all tired. You're all tired, but they just want to get done at night. I totally cocked up the mix one night in the 90s at about 4 a.m. Checking on the drum mix, I took all the tom channels out of the mix bus assigned to listen to the reverb returns, then forgot to put them back on again. We printed the mix at about 5 a.m., and neither me nor the band nor the band's producer, say that again, neither me nor the band nor the band's producer noticed the toms were all wash and no front. The damn track went to mastering and is on CD now. The funny thing is, no one but me ever seemed to notice, and no one ever commented. Moral of the story, Coke in the mix equals bad toms. It was poor audio engineering. And here's the classic one. This guy says, did this the other night, EQing while the EQ isn't in. It's crazy how the mind can play tricks with visual input. We talk about that all the time, how many different ways you fool yourself, and you're not actually hearing what you think you're hearing on there. And, if you ever need that super stunning version of it, go type in McGurk effect, like MCG irk, McGurk effect, and watch just how much your eyes have to do with what you hear. Somebody else says, you mean besides opening a studio? Yeah, pretty. Tracking my band in a pro studio that I also freelanced at. I was playing keys and engineering the session at the same time, virtually asking for something dumb to happen. I was just trying to do too much at once. We had 3 days booked to get main tracks, recording the full band at once, and would overdub vocal solos and other few instrumental parts later. I used 2 mics on the kick, an old AKGD 112 inside the kick, and a 10-inch speaker wired to a DI as a sub-kick on the outside. Tracked all 3 days, got the basics for a full album. Everyone at the studio agreed everything sounded great on all the playbacks. Until I got the tracks home to overdub mix. Turns out the AKG on the kick had failed in the middle of the third take on the first day, and for the rest of the session, the only thing that recorded the kick was the sub-kick speaker. Not the greatest kick sound ever, especially if you wanted any attack. It was on this session that I learned how to do drum replacement, was able to get reasonably good triggers from the sub-kick. Had I just been engineering, or had I hired another engineer to track, we would likely caught this much sooner. Lesson learned. Well, I was going to say while I was reading that, hey, just trigger that thing. Let's see. Recording a vocal for a very well-known rapper who I work with many times. The chorus was at the beginning of the song, then the first verse, the usual stuff so far. Then on a break, he decides to roll up some strong purple happy smoke. Everyone in the room is very, very high, and he says, okay, let's do the chorus. Something in my clouded mind thought he meant go back to the first chorus and do it over. I punch in at the beginning of the track and record over the first few words of the chorus. Needless to say, he was not pleased. Another time we recalled the track on the SSL, made a few changes, and went to print it to the same half-inch tape that we used to print the original mix. The sections were split with leader tape, so I went to the first section at the head of the tape and hit record. We were monitoring the half-inch machine, and suddenly the audio just drops out. Turns out it was the wrong tape from the library, and it hit the leader at the end of a much shorter portion of tape. Luckily, the producer was cool and said he had no use for that tape anymore, as the song had already gone to mastering. Wow. Ouch. That could have gone bad, huh? Let's see. Oh, you see, somebody even answered the first one. That thing in Reaper that auto saves the project every 10 minutes. I turned it off because I didn't like the files mounting up on my PC. Well, guess what happened? Yep. Leave that on. And I got mine on like 5 minutes or something. Let's see. Recently, I was tracking nylon guitar in my mix room, played by a session player, also a close friend for many years. 2 pairs of cans for monitoring, XY, small diaphragm condenser, and a ribbon. As always, after recording the first few takes, I've also checked them on mains as well as oratones, with and without the rest of the mix, to see if we were going in the right direction tone-wise. Mics positioning, repositioning, rinse, repeat. And when we were finally ready to roll, while chatting about things putting on our cans, I forgot to mute the monitors, which also had metronome click all the time. So after an entire afternoon of rather intense and inspired tracking session, we ended up with a fantastic result, only to discover it was ruined by monitors bleed. Seemed like a great time to open the bottle of Chivas I got for my birthday a week earlier. Didn't erase the metronome, but it sure eased the pain of having to redo the next day. Anyway, we're all going to do dumb things in the studio, and I've done plenty of dumb things. But it's I guess that's how you learn, right? We had a boss tell me that before when I used to do dumb things in the studio. He goes, well, we make mistakes. As long as you learn from them, and nobody died, we're okay. And speaking of that, tonight is the Bike Factory ride out, so I'm going to go get my bike ready and go. I'll see you guys next week.